All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. So we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 32, Text 12 to 15. Chapter title, Entanglement and Fruitive Activities. Adyastira charanam yo Veda garbhaha sahasribihi Yogeshwaraiha kumaradyayah Siddhair yoga pravartakah Adyastira charanam yo Veda garbhaha sahasribihi Yogeshwaraiha kumaradyayah Siddhe yoga pravartakah Adyastira charanam ho Veda garbhaha sahasribihi Yogeshwaraiha kumaradyayah Siddhair yoga pravartakah Adyastira charanam yo Veda garbha sahasribihi Yogeshwarai kumaradyayah Siddhair yoga pravartakah Adyastira charanam yo Veda garbha sahasribihi Siddhair yoga pravartakah Adyastira charanam yo Veda garbha sahasribihi Yogeshwarai kumaradyayah Siddhair yoga pravartakah Adyastira charanam yo Veda garbha sahasribihi Yogeshwarai kumaradyayah Siddhair yoga pravartakah. So I'll read the other verses as well. Veda drishta vimanena nihashangena vikarmana kartavrat kartavacha gunam brahma purusham purushashabam sa samshrutya punah kale kale nishvara murtina jate guna vyatikare yatha purvam prajayate aishwaryam parameshtyam cha tepi dharma vinirmitam nishve nishevya punar ayanti guna vyatikare sati. Word to word meaning. Adya, the creator, Lord Brahma, Sthira Charanam, of the immobile and mobile manifestations. Yaha, he who, Veda Garbhaha, the repository of Vedas. Saha, along with Rishibhiha, the sages. Yoga Ishwareha, with great mystic yogis. Kumara Adhyayaha, the Kumaras and others. Siddheha, with the perfected living beings. Yoga Pravartakaheya, the authors of the yoga system. Veda Drishtaya, because of independent vision. Abhimanena, misconception. Nihasangena, non-fruitive. Api, although. Karmana, by their activities. Kartabrat, from the sense of being a doer. Sagunam, possessing spiritual qualities. Brahma, Brahman. Purusham, the personality of Godhead. Purusha Rishabham, the first Purusha incarnation. Saha, he. Samshritya, having attained. Punaha, again. Kale, at the time. Kalena, by time. Ishvara Murtina, the manifestation of the Lord. Jate Guna Vyatikare, when the interaction of the mode arises. Yatha, as. Purvam, previously. Rajayate, is born. Aishwaryam, opulence. Parameshthyam, royal. Cha, and. The sages. Api, also. Dharma, by their pious activities. Vinirmitam, produced. Nishevaya, having enjoyed. Punaha, again. Ayanti, they return. Gunavyatikare, Gunavyatikare sati, when the interaction of the modes takes place. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. My dear mother, someone may worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead with a special self-interest, but even demigods such as Lord Brahma, the great sages such as Sanat Kumara, and great munis such as Marichi have come back to the material world again at the time of creation. When the interaction of three modes of material nature begins, Brahma, who is the creator of this cosmic manifestation and who is full of Vedic knowledge, and the great sages, who are the authors of spiritual path and the yoga system, come back under the influence of time factor. They are liberated by their non-fruitive activities, and they attain the first incarnation of the Purusha. But at the time of creation, they come back in exactly the same forms and positions as they had previously. Purport. That Brahma becomes liberated is known to everyone, but he cannot liberate his devotees. Demigods like Brahma and Lord Shiva cannot give liberation to any living entity. As it is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, only one who surrenders unto Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, can be liberated from the clutches of Maya. Brahma is called here Adya Sthira Charanam. He is the original first created living entity. And after his own birth, he creates the entire cosmic manifestation. He was fully instructed in the matter of creation by the Supreme Lord. Here he is called Veda Garbha, which means that he knows the complete purpose of the Vedas. He is always accompanied by such great personalities as Marichi, Kashyapa and the seven sages, as well as by great mystic yogis, the Kumaras and many other spiritually advanced living entities. But he has his own interest, separate from the Lord's. Veda Drishtya means that Brahma sometimes thinks that he is independent of the Supreme Lord, or he thinks of himself as one of the three equally independent incarnations. Brahma is entrusted with creation, Vishnu maintains, and Rudra, Lord Shiva, destroys. The three of them are understood to be incarnations of Supreme Lord in charge of three different material modes of nature, but none of them is independent of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Here the word Veda Drishtya occurs because Brahma has a slight inclination to think that he is as independent as Rudra. Sometimes Brahma thinks that he is independent of the Supreme Lord, and the worshipper also thinks that Brahma is independent. For this reason, after the destruction of this material world, when there is again creation, by the interaction of the material modes of nature, Brahma comes back. Although Brahma reaches the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the first Purusha incarnation, Mahavishnu, who is full with transcendental qualities, he cannot stay in the spiritual world. The specific significance of his coming back may be noted. Brahma and the great rishis and the great master of yoga, Shiva, are not ordinary living entities. They are powerful and have all perfections of mystic yoga. But still, they have an inclination to try to become one with the Supreme, and therefore they have to come back. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is accepted that as long as one thinks that he is equal with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is not completely purified or knowledgeable. In spite of going up to the first Purusha Avatara, Mahavishnu, after the dissolution of this material creation, such personalities again fall down or come back to the material creation. It is a great fall down on the part of the impersonalist to think that the Supreme Lord appears within a material body, and that one should therefore not meditate upon the form of the Supreme, but should meditate instead on the formless. For this particular mistake, even the mystic yogis or great stalwart transcendentalists also come back again when there is creation. All living entities other than the impersonalists and monists can directly take to devotional service in full Krishna consciousness and become liberated by developing transcendental loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such devotional service develops in degrees of thinking of Supreme Lord as Master, as Friend, as Son, and at last as Lover. These distinctions in transcendental variegatedness must always be present. ओम ज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनाशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा। So we are reading from chapter 32, text 12 to 15. So this is Lord Kapila Dev's instructions to his mother Devahuti. So from chapter 25 to 23, so Kapila Dev starts giving more information about how a living entity is getting entangled in this material world. And he also discusses how the path of liberation is. He also gives a good cosmological overview as well. So in this particular chapter, what we are discussing is entanglement in fruitive activities, how living entities gets entangled in fruitive activities. So the previous verses discuss about, the first few verses talks about good karma, how we perform activities being attached to the results and why that is condemned, and then Kapila Dev starts discussing about Hiranyagarbha worshippers, and he discusses about how the living entities meditate on different forms of the Lord and what is the result of meditation on that particular forms, whether they end up in Vaikuntha planets or whether they end up in Brahmajyoti, and Kapila Dev discusses all of that. So in this particular verse, so Kapila Dev discusses about a very particular case where Brahma gets deviated from his responsibilities. So let me read the translation again. My dear mother, someone may worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead with a special self-interest, but even demigods such as Lord Brahma, the great sages such as Sanat Kumara, and great munis such as Marichi have come back to the material world again at the time of creation. when the interaction of three modes of material nature begins, Brahma, who is the creator of this cosmic manifestation and who is full of Vedic knowledge, and the great sages, who are the authors of the spiritual path and the yoga system, come back under the influence of time factor. They are liberated by their non-fruitive activities and attain the first incarnation of Purusha. But at the time of creation, they come back in exactly the same forms and positions they previously had. So, what can we infer from this particular poet? So, if you read the word-to-word translation again, right? So, I observe 3 points. Veda Drishtya, because of independent vision. Abhimanena, by misconception. Kartrutvat, from the sense of being a doer. So what can we infer from these 3 points? So this is the heart of this particular verse. Any guesses? Because of independent vision, by misconception, from the sense of being a doer. So this directly breaks the Ishavasya principle, Aisha Upanishad, Mantra 1, that the Supreme Lord is the proprietor and we think we are the doer. We have independent thoughts, independent actions, and our actions are not aligned with the Lord's will or the desire of the Lord. So that's pretty much is the summary of this particular verse. So now let's expand this. So misconception is pretty much common everywhere, right? So humans have the misconception that material knowledge is very much superior to spiritual knowledge. So if you see that we have to work so hard to gain the material knowledge from childhood, we have to keep studying. And by the time we study and we grow up, the knowledge keeps changing. And whatever we have studied becomes mostly useless. And we will be stuck why we actually studied this. Right now we need something else to survive. Or you'll be studying something and working in something completely unrelated. So that's pretty much 90% of the cases. So Prabhupada here talks about the economic development and the knowledge that is required for the human civilization. It doesn't fit the purpose. So any product that you design, the design should fit the purpose. So the education system, what is currently designed by this human civilization, it doesn't fit the purpose of life. So what is the ultimate purpose of life? The ultimate purpose of life is self-realization. So we all know that human civilization is trying to do so many things or coming up with so many advancements and so many technologies. But Srila Prabhupada says they still cannot find a solution to the cycle of birth, death, old age and disease. They are just creating a disaster for the current generation and for the future generation, and they are not leading anywhere. So how do we understand this? So let's read or let's see what Prabhupada says in Isa Upanishad Mantra 9 Purport. Modern civilization has advanced considerably in the field of mass education, but the result is that people are more unhappy than ever before because of the stress placed on material advancement to the exclusion of the most important part of life, the spiritual aspect. So the whole education system is centered around some vision of a godless person leading this whole economy. So this doesn't add up with any of the principles defined in Bhagavad Gita or what Srimad Bhagavatam is talking about. So that's how we must understand. So what's the utmost principle that we must derive from all of this is we need to interact with the material modes only for basic survival. That's what Srila Prabhupada in the end concludes in Isa Upanishad Mantra 11. So if you see the current civilization, right, like we have people who are doing like pointless courses in their universities, which was pretty much the vision of the university leads who are leading the curriculum. So what they think the courses required is like fancy courses like say cultural anthropology. People don't even know why they are even studying such courses. So all those courses in the end in the market there are no jobs. And mostly the immigrants who come here they do some courses and in the end they don't get any jobs. So ultimately this is kind of a vision kind of which is like few people in the universities they think that this kind of education system would be spinning out so much money for the university in the end. So that is the ultimate thought process which is centered in this current education system. So material education keeps changing. So what is that which is permanent? What is that which is eternal and which is not changing? So ultimately that is the spiritual knowledge. It has never changed. The Bhagavatam verses remain the same. Krishna talks the same in Bhagavad Gita as well. So nothing in principle is changing. So this type of education and this type of guidance leads us to an independent vision and it creates a false identity for us because the education is not centered around self-realization. So Prabhupada calls this as decorations on a dead body. So these are the exact statements that Prabhupada quotes from his Upanishad. Those who play the role of helping this sort of civilization in the name of educational advancement are doing more harm than those who are on the platform of gross sense gratification. The advancement of learning by a godless people is as dangerous as a valuable jewel on the hood of a cobra. A cobra decorated with a valuable jewel is more advanced, is more dangerous than one not decorated. In India, as in many other countries, some people follow the custom of decorating, the custom of leading a procession with decorated dead body for the pleasure of the lamenting relators. In the same way, modern civilization is a patchwork of activities to cover the perpetual miseries of material existence. All such activities are aimed towards sense gratification. So because of this type of education where people get completely deviated from the purpose of life, what happens? It is not centered around self-realization and it is not centered around spirituality or it is not centered around God, Krishna. So people either become atheists or people become agnostics. So it's they don't want to think because they are not taught to think beyond this current birth. So if we go and ask to some atheist or an agnostic person, so why don't you try to understand what happens after you die? So pretty much the response what we get from them is that I am enjoying the current moment. The current moment is so magical. I don't want to think anything beyond the current moment and I don't plan for the future. So this is pretty much the response that we get. But if you see, right from their education, marriage, and their work, family, kids, retirement, grandchildren, retirement homes, everything is centered around future planning. So they are planning for their future in the current life and they know that their death is inevitable. But still, they don't want to pay attention to the fact that what happens after death. So that is the kind of knowledge and mentality this education system cultivates in the mind of the citizens. So this is exactly what Prabhupada is talking about in his Upanishad. So, what is the highest definition of knowledge? So we understand that material knowledge absolutely doesn't steer us in the right direction towards the actual purpose of life. The design is not fit to purpose. It's as simple as that. So what is the highest definition of knowledge? So Prahlad Maharaj gives us the highest definition of knowledge. There are two kinds of bodies for every individual soul. a gross body made of 5 gross elements, and a subtle body made of 3 subtle elements. Within these bodies, however, is the spirit soul. One must find the soul by analysis, saying, this is not it. Thus one must separate spirit from matter. So we need to understand what is spirit. We are eternal jivas, and what is matter. Currently, we are being manipulated by matter. We are being influenced by matter. So we need to be able to discriminate between matter and spirit as principle. But most often we get confused with principle and detail, and we identify ourselves falsely with this material body. So that's what is pretty much happening here. And he also gives one more verse. Sober and expert persons should search for the spirit soul with minds purified through analytical study in terms of the soul's connection with and distinction from all things that undergo creation, maintenance and destruction. So Srimad Bhagavatam verses 7.7.23 and 24. So this is the highest definition of knowledge which is given by Prahlad Maharaj. And this resonates with what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. So Prabhupada quotes this in Isopnishat, mantra 10. So pretty much mantra 9, 10 and 11 of Isopnishat, it talks about what is real knowledge, how do we discriminate between material knowledge and spiritual knowledge, what is Vidya, what is Avidya, and what do we need to sustain in this material world. So that's what Prabhupada talks mostly in Isopnishat verses 9, 10 and 11. So if that is not aligned with the Isavasya principle, as in the mantra 1 of Isopnishat, that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the proprietor, then we have a problem. That exact problem will come for non-devotees as well, and that will be magnified if it is non-devotees, because they are completely in the mode of ignorance. And if it is devotees, then it is a fall down. So that's what this verse is completely about. So what is real knowledge? Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, texts 8 to 12, Krishna confirms humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home and the rest, even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization, and philosophical search for absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge, and besides whatever there may be is ignorance. So Krishna quotes this in Bhagavad Gita chapter 13 verses 8 to 12. So this is what Krishna defines as knowledge. Anything other than this is illusion. Anything other than this, what we think, is illusion. So the Western civilization, what it is centered around ultimately, everybody knows. It's mostly centered towards enjoying. This whole world is like an amusement park designed for enjoying, and people really don't care about self-realization. So people are mad about technologies, processing devices. So in one of the lectures I heard the meaning of a device, device, developing vices. So that's exactly the purpose of device. And if you see in Apple Expo, whenever there is a new Apple product launch, the whole of America goes crazy. In the end of the year, they keep upgrading the same phone again and again and again and again. And people keep changing it again and again and again and again. And what's the point? Even they don't know. There are hardly any new features. There are hardly any new updates. It's just like different paint, different color, different naming conventions for the same product. So that's what the knowledge that we gain from the education system. So that's the vision with which we are able to see things. So now how do we spiritualize this vision? How do we cultivate this knowledge of spiritual enlightenment. So that is given in Nectar of Devotion by Rupa Goswami. And that is the essence of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. So if you read Nectar of Devotion, so every religion, everybody talks about there is God. We have to love God. Nobody explains who is God. And nobody cares to define the process how to love God. But Rupa Goswami has defined this process very clearly with scientific evidences, and the process works. It is as simple as that. So only if you get into the process, you will be able to observe and get a taste of devotional service. So that's the essence of Nectar of Devotion. So how do you know that you have cultivated this knowledge? So once you have the knowledge, you follow the process, and if you have followed the process correctly, then you should be seeing the results. So how do you know that you have cultivated this particular knowledge? So Srimad Bhagavatam chapter 1 verse 1.2.14 it says, Tasmad ekena manasa Bhagavan satatvam patiha Shrotavyah kirtavyascha Dehaya pujasya cha nityada. Therefore, with one pointed attention, one should constantly hear about, glorify, remember and worship the personality of Godhead, who is the protector of the devotees. With one pointed attention, no deviation. So we need to understand the desire of the Lord and then act accordingly in this material world. How can we do that? Only when we have achieved taste. So we don't have faith, and as per the process of nectar of devotion, the taste, the ruchi, comes later. So what comes first? Faith or the taste? If we don't have taste, then how will we have faith? How will we test the process? So initially, when we begin the process, it is curiosity. That's what is called as Shraddha. So that curiosity increases, and then your faith develops and it becomes stronger. Once your faith is established a bit more higher than the curiosity, then the process starts. So how do we get more taste? The more we think that we don't have the taste, the more taste we get. It's as simple as that. So one pointed attention, one should constantly hear and chant the holy name. So that is what Srimad Bhagavatam states, 1.2.14. So let's go back to the purport. So in the purport, Prabhupada says that the Brahma becomes liberated is known to everyone, but he cannot liberate his devotees. Yes, demigods like Brahma and Lord Shiva cannot give liberation to any living entity, as it is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Only one who surrenders unto Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, can be liberated from the clutches of Maya. So we all know that when Hiranyakashipu approached Lord Brahma and saying that he wants to be Amar, he wants to become immortal, he thought he can be immortal and rule the entire world. And Brahma said, even he is not immortal, he can't grant that boon. And then Hiranyakashipu thought that he's so cool and he asked for so and so and came up with so much permutations and combinations, and he asked for a boon thinking that he won't die. But eventually he was killed in a very silly way by the Lord. And Lord Shiva also cannot give liberation. And then the example is Ravana praying to Lord Shiva. And Shiva said to Parvati, and Parvati was saying that he's calling you, why don't you go and help him? Shiva said, no, I don't have the authority to give liberation, and it can be given only by Vishnu or Krishna. So as it is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, only one who surrenders unto Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, can be liberated from the clutches of Maya. So this is confirmed by Krishna in chapter 4, verse 11. Ye yatha mam prapadyante tams tatvaiva bhajamyaham mama yat manu vartate manushya partha sarveshah. As all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects, O son of Pritha. So Basically, what Prabhupada is trying to say in the first few lines is liberation can be given only by Krishna. No other demigods can give liberation. So now, in the next few lines, Prabhupada is establishing the identity of Brahma. So the key takeaway for us from the previous lines is who exactly gives liberation and why is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. So the next few lines Prabhupada talks about what is our original identity. So in this particular verse, he is first writing about Brahma. Brahma here is called Adya Sthira Charanam. He is the original first created living entity. And after his own birth, he creates the entire cosmic manifestation. He was fully instructed in the matter of creation by the Supreme Lord. Here he is called Veda Garbha, which means he knows the complete purpose of Vedas. So that is actually the position of Brahma. So Brahma was instructed on the spiritual knowledge by the Supreme Lord himself. So what can we understand from this? If we follow the instructions of our Guru, in time the spiritual knowledge will be revealed to us. Either one should have the Lord's mercy, the grace of the Lord, or the spiritual master's mercy, or the mercy of Vaishnavas. Without that, the knowledge will not be revealed to you. So one can do a rogue study of the scriptures. One can have the knowledge and say, I know everything. Okay, fine. So what are you actually doing about it is the question. Everybody knows everything. What are you actually doing about it? So when does knowledge gets converted into realization? Only through service. If there is no form of devotional service in between, the knowledge will remain as just knowledge, and trying to apply that is just mental speculation. So knowledge becomes realization only through service. And how do we serve? Krishna. We serve Krishna through our Guru. So to all those who think that we don't need a living Guru, that's the misconception. They are completely bewildered. Because when Krishna appeared in this world, he accepted a Guru. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in this world, they accepted a Guru. And that is just for setting examples to others. So one must be able to serve Krishna in the form of Guru. A spiritual master is none other than the representative of Krishna. So by pleasing the spiritual master or following his instructions, one can serve Krishna. One cannot approach Krishna directly. He must approach Krishna through his devotees or his dear paraphernalia, like Tulsi Maharani or Krishna's cows or the spiritual master. That is how we must approach Krishna. So that is the key takeaway for here from this particular few lines. So even after instructing the complete purpose of Vedas, Krishna is so kind, he has not taken away the free will. The free will of Brahma remains with him as it is. So what happens? Brahma, he is always accompanied by great personalities such as Marichi, Kashyapa and 7 sages, as well as mystic yogis, Kumaras, and Prabhupada repeatedly says, but he has his own interests separate from the Lord's. Brahma sometimes thinks that he is independent of the Supreme Lord. He thinks of himself as one of the 3 equally independent incarnations. Brahma has slight inclination to think that he is independent as Rudra. He keeps telling this again and again. Sometimes Brahma thinks that he is independent of the Supreme Lord, and the worshipper also thinks that Brahma is independent. The specific significance of his coming back may be noted. He tells this multiple times, 5 or 6 times. So how can Brahma get deviated from his responsibilities? So our acharyas say that this is a very exceptional case of one Brahma in one particular universe. Fortunately, we are not in that universe. So this is when Brahma gets deviated from his responsibility because of having independent vision. So we are discussing about independent consciousness here. which means you think you are the controller. You think you are the Ishvara. So that is the principle. So for that principle, there are two categories. Okay. So one category is people who think they are not influenced by Maya, and people who are actually influenced by Maya. So instead of people, you can say avatars. So all the Vishnu Tattvas, they are not influenced by Maya. And anybody else, they are influenced by Maya. So for example, the Brahma here can be classified as Brahma in Shantaras, but he is not perfected Shantaras. So that is the beginning stage of devotional service which Rupa Goswami says in Nectar of Devotion, chapter 35. One has to be firmly situated in Shantarasa and from that attain the perfect stage. So this is an example of a Brahma in Shantarasa, in the mode of neutrality, not performing his duties properly. Yes, of course, if you don't attain perfection, you can fall down. So Brahma, in Brahma Samhita, what Acharya says, he is in Madhuryas. And Brahma, who is offering prayers before the time of creation, he is in Sakyas. So that is how we understand. So anybody who has not perfected any of the rasas can still fall down. That is the principle. So here what we talk about is Brahma in Shantaras, the mood of neutrality. So the specific significance of his coming back may be noted. Brahma and the great rishis and the great master of yoga, Shiva, are not ordinary living entities, but still they are under the influence of the modes of material nature. That is something we need to bear in mind. So why do we have the 10 offenses? The second offense, one should not consider the names of demigod like Lord Brahma or Lord Shiva to be independent of the names of Lord Vishnu. So sometimes, right, like, when we get overpowered with some of the responsibilities in the spiritual life, and you get some elevated services. So with what consciousness you are performing that service is what is the key takeaway from here. Whether you perform any type of yoga, say Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga or Karma Yoga, the right consciousness and the right intent, that is very, very important. If you don't perform any of the service with right intent, and if you get attached to the service or to the designation which is giving you that particular service, then there is a problem. So when you do a service, the key takeaway for us is Krishna is empowering you with specific qualities to perform that particular service. He is empowering you directly or through some devotees. And he takes away the qualities when he thinks that you have completed the service. So one should never take pride in any of the service one performs. So that is the key takeaway from here. We as sadhakas, we need to stick to our sadhana and focus on our sadhya, the goal. So if we slightly deviate, but they still have an inclination to try to become one with the Supreme, or therefore they have to come back, we get deviated, we will be bewildered and we will have misconception. We will think we are the doer. We will definitely enter this thought process if we don't understand this concept of intention, the motive, the driving factor in your consciousness for performing a particular action or a service. That is what is creating the bondage. Whether you perform any type of activity with attachment or without attachment, or with bhakti or without bhakti, the intent, if it is not aligning with the Savasya principle, and if it is centered for your own benefit, then that creates bondage. So that's the key takeaway for us from here. So then, the result, what happens? It is accepted that as long as one thinks that he is equal with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is not completely purified or knowledgeable. In spite of going up to the first Purusha Avatara, Mahavishnu, after dissolution of this material creation, such personalities again fall down. This is what happens. So it is a great fall down on the part of impersonalists to think that Supreme Lord appears within a material body and that one should therefore not meditate upon the form of the Supreme Lord but should meditate instead on the formless. So Prabhupada is quoting impersonalists here. So basically there are two types of impersonalists. So one is the Mayavad and one is are the Brahmavadis. So Brahmavadis are people who are self-realized souls. They are sthita prajnas and they follow the particular angas, the limbs of the Jnana path. And then they attain Jivan Mukta. In their own body they get liberated, but there are chances of falling down. And if they don't fall down, if they don't commit any offenses to any of the Vaishnavas, then they can get liberated. They can either go to Brahmajyoti or merge with the body of the Lord. But they don't commit offense. So they are basically, say, attracted by Brahman. So Brahman Upakas. So they are attracted towards the Upasana, towards Brahman. They, even though they understand that, Lord comes, has a known personal form and he performs all his pastimes, they are not attracted. They are attracted only towards the effulgence of the Lord, out to the Paramatma appearing in the heart. They don't want to enter the planet of the Lord. So there are three stages of realization. You can either be happy by seeing the rays of the sun. Prabhupada quotes this in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2.2 purport. You can either be happy by seeing the rays of the sun, or seeing the surface of the sun, or by going into the sun planet. So these are the three stages of Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagwan realization. So they are happy with Brahman and Paramatma realization. So they don't want to go beyond that. But if they don't commit offense on the lotus feet of the Lord, they still get liberated. But the Mayavadis, they think that the Lord takes on a form only through Maya, only through Brahman. So that's the problem. So they think that because the Lord takes, for them the ultimate supreme is Brahman, so the Lord takes on, when Brahman is in the mode of goodness, that is the Lord's avatars. When Brahman is in the mode of passion, it's devatas or demigods. And when Brahman is in the mode of ignorance, it's the material manifestation. So everything is Maya. Though they understand that it is the Supreme Lord, they think that this body is Maya. The Leela, the pastimes is performing as Maya. And that is where they are committing an offense towards the lotus feet of the Lord. And these are the impersonalists which Prabhupada describes. So to understand more about this, Bhagavad Gita chapter 7 verse 24 and chapter 9, 11 and 12, Krishna talks about Mayavadis. And chapter 12 verses 3, 4, Krishna talks about Brahmavadis and how they at last attain them. So you can go through those verses, the reference. So for this particular mistake, even the great mystic yogis or great stalwart transcendentalists also come back again when there is creation. So what is the mistake we are talking about? Seeing differences, not recognizing Lord in his absolute form, misconceptions, and thinking you are the doer. So any of this, if you have any misconception, understanding Supreme and whatever bhakti you perform, you are going to come back to this world. You are going to be entangled and you are creating bondage. So that is the understanding. All living entities other than the impersonalists and the monists can directly take to devotional service in full Krishna consciousness and become liberated by developing transcendental loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such devotional service develops in degrees of thinking of the Supreme Lord as Master, Friend, Son, and at last Lover. So, anybody who understands the form of the Lord, it is recommended to take and practice devotional service. Though through the path of jhana, one can attain self-realization, but that is the Satya Yuga process. During Satya Yuga, your smriti shakti, your memory power, and your dharana shakti, where you can be patient and hold your senses, control your senses, that was really, really high. In Kali Yuga, your smriti shakti and the dharana shakti is very low. So Prabhupada, even though a pathway is available through different yoga processes, Prabhupada derives all of that in Bhagavad Gita purpose, and he ultimately focuses on the process of bhakti, which is a lot more simpler and not complicated. And Prabhupada says the process is simple, but it's not easy. We need to remember that as well. One must be completely surrendered to get the results. So, when Prabhupada talks about developing transcendental loving service, most often we think that in life we have a lot of impediments, and during impediments we are not able to practice bhakti. So what we need to understand is Krishna needs our heart 100%. He doesn't need 99.9999%. He wants complete 100%. So he will squeeze your heart. What comes out of it? That is what matters. Whether do you have that love within you? That is what Krishna will test eventually. So we can wind up with one of the pastimes of Srila Prabhupada. So there was one devotee who was serving Srila Prabhupada. He's from America. So Prabhupada was really not well, and this devotee came to serve Srila Prabhupada. So he didn't understand or analyze the climate in Vrindavan very much. So he was pretty complacent about the fact that the climate would be suitable or not. But he came because serving Srila Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada's health recovered a lot. But eventually, this devotee who was serving, he fell sick. He got some malaria or something. And then he reached out to Prabhupada's secretary. He didn't know how to say to Prabhupada that this climate is not suiting. He wanted to go back to the West. And then he re-energized. And he wants to go back to America. So he didn't know how to say this to Srila Prabhupada. So he went to Prabhupada's secretary. Brahmananda was the secretary at that point in time. And he says this situation to him. And then he patiently discusses this with Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada calls his devotee. So what did Prabhupada say? So you are responsible for my life at the moment. And because of you, I am alive. You have helped me so much. Now go to America and take care of yourself. You need to do what is the bare minimum to maintain your body and mind. Only then you can practice devotional service. So the story doesn't end here. And after that, this devotee was like really disturbed, and after that he came out after talking to Prabhupada with tears in his eyes. And after that, later in the evening, he goes to a courtyard for a walk with Srila Prabhupada. At that point in time, he was contemplating on the advice. And then he told to Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada, I think I should stay back in Vrindavan and then depend on Krishna, and I should serve you. So that is that 1 second of that thought which comes to your mind when there is an impediment. Right? That is when Krishna is squeezing your heart. So at that point in time, how much devotion we have for Krishna from the bottom of our heart, uprooting all the anarthas. That's your natural state of the soul. The fact that some other thought is coming proves that you are conditioned. So with this, we can wind up. Any questions? So Prabhuji's question is, Brahma has a daily sadhana. At the beginning of each of his days, before restoring the destroyed universe, Brahma meditates on the Supreme Lord for 100 celestial years, which is equivalent to 2 years of a Brahma day. After that, he gets darshan of the Lord in one of the incarnations and greets him with prayers. Then he receives instructions to create. So we saw this on the first 4 lines of the Bhagavad. And then he meditates on the Lord again in order to understand, hear and understand correctly. That's right. So Brahma has to read the Vedas. It's mentioned in second canto. Brahma has to read the Vedas 3 times to come to the conclusion that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that is one reason our acharyas say that we should read Srila Prabhupada's books at least 3 times before reading other acharyas' work, until we understand the Uttara Paksha and the Purva Paksha and get the Siddhanta out of it correctly. From Prabhupada's books, we are not qualified to read any other acharya's book. So Brahma had to read it multiple times to understand correctly. After that he begins to create. Yes, Brahma's sadhana is different from ours, but the analogy is explored. The Brahma of our universe has become a devotee, and therefore most likely both he and those with him after the second world will not return to Mahavishnu, but to Vaikuntha or Goloka. Is it so? So yes, if a devotee performs his sadhana correctly, depending on what sadhana he performs, whether he performs Vaidhi sadhana bhakti or Ragatmika bhakti, he attains Vaikuntha or higher realms of Aishwarya, such as Dwaraka or Mathura. But to attain Goloka, you need 100% love. So to attain Goloka or Krishna to attain Vrindavan. So Mathura, Dwaraka, Vrindavan, everything is in Goloka. But to attain Vrindavan, you need 100% love. You need to be a pure devotee. So what it means to be a pure devotee, your thoughts, your words and your actions, they need to be in sync. And a perfect example for this is Mother Yashoda. What is she doing when she is churning butter for Krishna? She is thinking about Krishna and she is singing about Krishna, and the activity she is doing is for Krishna. So thoughts, words and actions, that needs to align. And you need to be a pure devotee with 100% unprecedented love. That's what the Acharyas define. Spontaneous attraction. Only then you can reach Krishna in Vrindavan. And this spontaneous attraction for Krishna, that is what is given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That is the purpose of descent of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Adilila chapter 4 verse 15-16. It talks about Ragamarg, Raga Bhakti. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has descended to experience the pure love, the separation of Srimati Radharani. Krishna incarnates himself, he appears himself in the mood of Srimati Radharani to experience the pure love which Radharani is experiencing for Krishna. So Krishna cannot give devotion for himself. So who can give devotion? Who can give love of Krishna? Only Srimati Radharani. Radharani is called as Bhakti Pradayini. So she is the giver of devotion. So in order to attain Krishna, we should have pure love for Srimati Radharani. Only then we can attain Krishna in Vrindavan. That is not an easy job. So chapter 4, Adilila, verses 15-16, the descent of Mahaprabhu is clearly explained. We need to develop that spontaneous attraction. So one has to transcend from Vaidhi Bhakti to Raganaga Bhakti, or cultivate that spontaneous attraction to attain Krishna in Vrindavan. Else you will maximum attain Vaikuntha, and if your Vaidhi Bhakti is centered on worship of Radha Krishna, you attain higher realms of Aishwarya, like Dwaraka or Mathura. But to attain Krishna and Raja is not an easy task. But it is possible, anything is possible with the mercy of Krishna. Pure devotees, yeah. Only pure devotees can attain. So we are so fallen. So once a devotee comes to Srila Prabhupada and he says that, Prabhupada, I'm so fallen. I don't know, I'm really, really fallen. Like, Prabhupada says, yes, you're right. you're worthless, you're insignificant. That's exactly what Prabhupada says. So with the mercy of Krishna, you can go to Vrindavan. Or else you need to have that intense greed to get Krishna prema. And then you can practice Raganuga Bhakti. There's like different process to follow that. You need to get your Acharya's authority. You need to get permission from your Acharyas, and there's a different set of sadhana you need to perform and all that. So we are not qualified even to discuss that matter. Hare Krishna. Prabhupada ki